Joel Osteen is currently trending on social media. Joel Osteen is a famous mega, the pastor of a mega church, Lakewood Church in Houston. The church received $4.4 million in PPP during the coronavirus pandemic. $4.4 million. This is a man who is a believer of this so-called prosperity gospel. I guess if you believe in God enough and you pray hard enough and you pay your tithes, you're going to have some kind of prosperity. So here he was this morning on the Today Show, and he's been really getting slammed for this, talking about just what you need to do. Just have some peace and don't think negative. Listen to this.
But just start the day off in peace. In other words, start it grateful, not getting up, rushing. I got to get the kids, and I'm worried about these problems, and I got to deal with this. But I think you need to have some time to just come back to a place of peace where you're grateful. Think about what's right, not what's wrong. Focus on what you do have, not what you don't have.
Focus on what you do have, not what you don't have. And he lives in the state of Texas, where they're slashing minimum, where they're slashing unemployment benefits, where they're slashing voting rights, where it has a horrible minimum wage. But focus on what you don't have. Now, regardless of what you don't have, if you need more, if you know what he doesn't have, he has more than what he needs, right? And I just wonder what form of Christianity is this? Because with my teachings, my studies, Christ was against capitalism in this kind of way. And I think of this man being some kind of leader. When there was that flood in Houston, Texas, he reportedly locked his doors. This is somebody who allegedly hasn't endorsed anybody, but I think we all know who he really supports. But he said this about Trump when Trump was running for election the first time. Mr. Trump is an incredible communicator and brander. He's been a friend of our ministry. He's a good man. And so here he is. And I was disappointed in the two folks who interviewed him because they didn't ask him any kind of question about this 4.4. I think it was the third highest PPP loan out of anybody in the state of Texas, the third highest that went to Lakewood Church. But here's this prosperity gospel. And in this moment, right now, with folks with unemployment high, with sometimes folks being forced to go back to work for less pay than they had before the coronavirus pandemic, you have this person just saying, just be positive. Don't worry about what you don't have. Well, how does that help somebody who is a single mom in Texas or a single dad in Texas? How does that help somebody where you have police officers being able to get away with killing somebody unarmed, and you have this thing called qualified immunity? I think you should focus on what you don't have. I think it's important to focus on that. Now, if you have a lot, it doesn't really matter. But you got to focus on what you don't have to try, if you can, if you have the ability. I always say this, that folks say, oh, well, you have a choice. Well, some folks have choices A through D. Some folks have choices just A and B. But this prosperity gospel is just, I just think right now, hearing that, can you imagine if mega churches, not small churches, but if mega churches pay their fair share in taxes? That might bring down the deficit. If the Church of Scientology, if Lakewood Church, if Paula White's Angels from Africa Church, if they paid their fair share in taxes, that might help something. So yeah, he's getting dragged really hard, as he should, and I just think it's disgusting. I just think it's bizarre, it's strange, and prosperity gospel is a lie. 866-801-8255, 866-801-8255. Alan, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it was interesting. I find him interesting as a young pastor. Of course, I listened to him. I listened to the whole group. I used to listen to Paula White, John Gray. I think John Gray and he are in the same sort of church family, and I think there's like maybe 4 of them in Texas, maybe, which sort of explains for the large amount of the money. Not so much, but still. I think it's hard to understand, and I don't think that it's indicative of every church right now.
No, not at all.
I'm a steward at Albert Street, John Howard Wesley, and they tithe the tithe. They give money. I mean, they are literally in the community every week giving money from their members into the community around the United States and around the world. And I think it's amazing. So I think done properly, it could be amazing. But I mean, I know once before he flaunted about his car and
his Ferrari, his mansion,
something else he did, and his planes. I do think it's weird to me when you are a minister of the people and there's this much suffering going on and you have a private plane and a private car, right? I get those things, and people say the same thing about attorneys all the time. Okay, right? I think the same.
But I think attorneys are different than the word of God. I think,
right.
If I have nothing against folks being wealthy and having tons
right.
of money. Absolutely. I have nothing against that. What I do have an issue with is when you are using the word of God, that's your prophet, and then you tell people, don't worry about what you don't have. And I'm not saying Lakewood Church has never done anything good in the community. I'm not saying that that's never happened. But me personally, I know he hasn't said he's endorsed Trump explicitly, but if you're calling Trump a good man and a good communicator, if you're saying that, and you're in Houston with the amount of black folks in Houston, for me, something in the milk ain't clean.
Well,
and I just don't. And
the flood is the story, right? If you didn't open your doors,
the flood is a big story,
right? If you didn't open your doors during the flood or whatever, right? That's the story.
I mean, does anybody out there, do y'all believe in prosperity gospel? I mean, most people who end up wealthy, really wealthy, I'm not talking about like a celebrity, like a random pop star or athlete, but most folks who are wealthy, they came from wealth. I heard Michael Bloomberg say, oh, I didn't come from money. Yes, you did. Michael Bloomberg didn't grow up in poverty. The whole rags to riches story, that's pretty much a myth. Sadly, most people who the economic bracket they are born into, sadly, they stay in that economic bracket for the most part, the large majority of Americans. So this idea of prosperity gospel is strange to me. I just wonder, following this person, it just feels like a con. It feels like a con. $4.4 million to Lakewood Church. Did they really need that? They don't even pay taxes. 866-801-8255, 866-801-8255. And you know what's funny about Pastor John Gray? I think John Gray has Relentless Church. He's in, it might already be done, but he had a conflict he didn't even own the building.
No.
Where Relentless Church was. And there was a conflict. There was a conflict with that church having to leave because he didn't own the building. And I'm like, how come Joel Osteen's church and Paula White, how come they own their buildings, but you don't? Like, what is going on? What exactly? And I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying this is how the structure is set up. Pastor Osteen, we don't need you to tell us don't worry about what you don't have. Why don't you worry about what we don't have? And what exactly are you going to do? $4.4 million. And you think Trump is a good man. If you think Trump is a good man, then me personally, I trust I don't trust your judgment at all. 866-801-8255, 866-801-8255. And I want to remind people, the minimum wage in Texas is $7.25 an hour. $7.25 an hour. My God. If I want to see some work from Joel Osteen, listen, just worry about poor folks for a minute. Why don't you march down to Governor Abbott's office? I'm sure you have his phone number. and demand that he raise the minimum wage. And this is not an indictment on all churches. Reverend William Barber does amazing work, incredible work.
Tons of ministers do amazing work. The black churches
Tons of ministers do amazing work. Absolutely. If Reverend William Barber, which he didn't, got $4 million, I'd be okay with that because I know that brother's going to work. He has worked hard for exonerees. He has worked hard for poor folks. He has worked hard for black folks. He goes hard. So how can you got a $4.4 million PPP loan. You should be down at Governor Abbott's office outside of politics, just saying, listen, my people in Texas are only making $7.25 an hour. That should be an agenda item every single day when you preach on Sunday. Every single day should be an agenda item. That is deplorable. $7.25 an hour in Texas? And your church is in Houston? There is no, I mean, even if it's $10, $11, that's horrible. So what are you really doing? And mind you, he has the money to give out food here or there. He has the money to do a community center here or there. They got to do that stuff. That tricky logic.
Well,
they do that kind of tricky logic to just make, oh, we're doing something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think today, indicative of the show and the reason he was on the show,
was to hawk his book.
Because he could have given the book away for free.
Okay.
He was promoting the book rather than giving the book away. He could have made a digital book and said, here, come download this, get your happiness on.
You know who did that? Judge Judy. She published a book, made it a digital book, and said, download it for free. Download it for free. What does anybody get out of this? I don't understand. You ain't going to be him. He needs you to not be him so he could survive. Haven't we seen this before? Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker? Haven't we seen this stunt before?
And I think it's important to understand that this is one of the problems that we have right now, that you see Stephen Miller sort of feeding the gap and coming to sue people. That when you do something specific, like aim something at black farmers because they were disadvantaged, then he's going to say, oh, no. That's unfair in the Constitution. But when you make a program like the PPP and you make it equal for churches who probably do need it, there are probably a lot of churches that did need it, that do deserve it, that are doing the right thing with it, right?
Absolutely.
And he just got a bulk of it, right? Just like many of the companies who are now giving back that money, right? That got it, that the Biden administration said, my Department of Justice will fine you, right? Somebody bought a yacht, so Yahoo or somebody bought a yacht with the money, all kind of craziness that they sort of took the money and did crazy things with it. Now they're giving it back. Kanye West took some of the money, right?
Yes, he did. Kanye did.
Who benefited, who didn't need it. And that's sort of the concept here is, if you didn't need it, then why'd you take it if you're a good citizen? And then you say, oh, because it was offered to me, right? Well, in this case, I mean, I would need to see receipts of how he shepherded back through, but I know in his mind he's saying, but I employ all these people, right? I know the church employs a lot of people because it's a big enterprise.
Yes.
Right?
And they don't pay taxes.
And they don't pay taxes. And so you say, is that enough? Right? Does that make it equal? And that's really where this problem, where the rubber meets the road right now, in that game of sort of saying, no, wait a minute, it can't be so targeted, which Biden did do in the second round of giving out the PPP. He said, only small businesses, the smaller banks are going to be able to give this money out. So I'm going to reach the people who need it.
And in the first round of the PPP, this was, I'm not making this up, this is well documented, black businesses were being shut out. They weren't qualifying. So they had to change it for the second round. I mean, it really just outrages me. And I just hope, I don't know the contingency of black folks in that church. I got to be frank about this. We just can't follow white evangelicalism. I'm not saying we can't follow a white pastor. There are plenty of white pastors out there who do really good work. But when you are white evangelical, you know, when you are on this level, when you're on TV hawking your book, and you're this multi-millionaire, it just makes no sense to me. Right. Just makes no sense to me. And good, but the truth is social media is going to drag him. Doesn't really matter because he's good. He's protected.
And he's going to sell some books. People are going to buy the book.
He's going to sell some books. Do you remember when Creflo Dollar said he needed a new private jet and folks donated and he got a new private jet? Yeah. So we have to really be careful of who we, put our life and death to. We have to really be careful who we assign our spirituality to. I call it spiritual and theological violence. It's real. It hurts people. It hurts communities. It's real, and it can
And
hurt
as you
your
know,
your
everybody should, it's a perfect time to talk about your documentary again that you showed at the White House that was amazing
yeah
and
yeah
phenomenal, that sort of spoke to this issue about spiritual violence.
yeah. I did a doc for BET back in 2015. You can still watch it online, called "Holler If You Hear Me, Black and Gay in the Church." And I went to a homeless shelter and spoke to homeless kids. Every black kid that was there, they were there because they were thrown out of their house because their parents perceived that they were gay. And this is why a lot of young people, a lot of young black folks are walking away from the church. Whether it's, and Joel Osteen is incredibly homophobic. So whether it's that, whether it's money, whether it's politics, what are our churches really doing for us right now? And white evangelicalism is a very scary force in our country and in our politics.
From religion, I think it's also important to just note that, we are followers of Jesus in the Bible, and you never show me Jesus's church. Where is it? Where was that church? He never actually had a physical body anywhere in the Bible. Show me, tell me where it is, point to it. He was never in the room with people who are always saying every story in the Bible is about him being with someone who was dealing with some type of struggle, right? He never
Yeah.
was in this place where the people weren't in struggle. So if religion, the concept of religion from the philosophical perspective is about helping those in need, it is not about being with those who are not in need, then constructually there's a problem.